Yes, many people have referred to President Ronald Reagan as the Teflon president, but in this case, Trump has escaped several criminal cases. He, through delay, has managed to push back and avoid any type of, I mean, he did have a civil lawsuit, but in terms of the criminal cases, what remains is the state court case in Georgia, which is up in the air. The lead prosecutor was disqualified by a court in December. That is being appealed, but that is the only criminal case against the
Mhm.
president-elect that remains. Is that correct, John George?
I believe so. In that case, I mean, just from the standpoint of the prosecution, it's pretty disastrous now. I mean, it's become rudderless, and they're now fighting to just, in the same way that Jack Smith was fighting to just be able to proceed with the case, they're having the same issues now. So that's another case that remains to be seen whether it will continue or not. I mean, the Supreme Court's ruling was very strong that now sitting as president, now that Donald Trump is president, I imagine that he's not going to have to face any sort of trial or any sort of hearing or anything of that nature while he's the president of the United States. He has strong immunity at this point.
Yeah, he has managed to immunize himself through strategy, and of course the judges who have been ruling in his favor. He has definitely been successful in
Yep.
that regard. And Bragg's District Attorney Bragg's case is the only one to reach trial. It might have been sort of the case that people didn't give a lot of credit to. What do you think that Alvin Bragg, the one case that stuck, the one case that went forward, how will history look at this whole
It,
scenario with all these federal cases, with a really strong state court
sure.
case in Georgia that for election interference that ultimately fell apart?
It is very interesting to think about that the federal cases and the Georgia case, they had a bigger, more fleshed out story. And in terms of seriousness and what we were talking about, integrity of elections, democracy, we're talking about retaining classified documents. The Stormy Daniels case, for lack of a better word, calling it that, was sort of the more salacious case, sort of like the tabloid case, something that you would just see on, like, you're checking out of the grocery store and you see this tabloid of this is what's going on here. It is, looking back on it, Alvin Bragg seemed to question whether or not he was going to go through with it, finally decided to go through with it. And it is somewhat ironic that this is the case that ended up going to a hearing, especially involving Michael Cohen and just the whole cast of characters involved in this. And then all the other cases that had, you know, FBI, they had huge investigations, they had the Department of Justice, sort of fell by the wayside. I think we'll look back on it in history, and it's almost a little bit of a head scratcher to say, how did this one end up there? And how did the other ones totally fall apart? But I think you do have to credit President Trump's defense team. They were effective in their approach. However it played out, they were effective in pushing off these other cases, and they were almost effective in pushing off the sentencing for this case, and they're going to appeal it. So they, for whatever their strategy was, getting President Trump to election day and getting the payoff of actually being elected, because if this doesn't happen, right, if he doesn't get elected, then it's a different story as well. These things could easily continue, right? So that was really the payoff of all of it. They were effective in doing it, although they couldn't stop this one case from Alvin Bragg. But yeah, that's the only one that really went through.
Yeah, from his legal team standpoint, where opportunity and luck met preparation, has succeeded for President-elect Trump, who will be inaugurated in a couple of weeks or less, actually. But today he was sentenced to an unconditional discharge by Judge Juan Merchan in New York court, and he will be the first sitting president to have a criminal sentence on his record. But we will. It's been a head scratcher of a few years anyway, in general. So as you said, a head scratcher how this all played out, but this is what we have this afternoon. Thank you so much, John George, for breaking down all these cases, what's happening, what's happened, what's going to potentially happen in the future. And I look forward to speaking with you again about all of this, all these legal cases and
I
issues.
look forward to it. Yeah, thank you so much.